Hi, I'm Lisa and this is Tour with Lisa. Welcome to a virtual tour of the Washington Monument. Now this is our very first monument or memorial that we have on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. And there was talks about building some kind of memorial to George Washington before he was even gone. Of course, nothing actually happened and he really did not want anything built of him. But of course, we're going to do that because he is our first president. So the initial talks were, of course, of the general on a stallion, on his horse, but nothing ever really got off the ground. And it wasn't until 1833 a society was formed to construct some type of monument to George Washington. The main leaders of this society were James Madison and Supreme Court Justice John Marshall. So they are able to raise about $28,000 to construct a memorial. So next we have to decide on what is it going to be? What is it going to look like? So we're going to run a design competition. We had a design competition for the White House. And you'll see that all the memorials that are on the National Mall have had design competitions. So in the design competition, it takes them 10 years before they actually select a design. And the winner was a man named Robert Mills. And his design is in the picture above, which was quite different than what we have there today, isn't it? Well, funds kind of ran out, so we weren't able to really complete the monument the way it was intended to be. But we'll get into that as the story goes along. So the cornerstone to erect the monument is held at a ceremonial celebration in 1848. It was July 4th, and there were several prominent people there. Abraham Lincoln was there. He must have been a young senator. I'm not sure what he was at the time, but James Buchanan was there. He was the 15th president also before Lincoln. Dolly Madison was there. And Betsy Hamilton was there, and she was the widow of Alexander Hamilton. And of course, the president of the time was there, and that was James Polk. Now, also, in the cornerstone that they laid, they put some mementos. They put in a Declaration of Independence, they put in a Constitution, they put in a census of that year. And they also probably, most likely, there was probably coins, maybe newspaper articles, such as typical of putting in cornerstones. So the construction of the monument, it is believed that there were no slaves involved in building the monument because they needed skilled stone cutters. Now that doesn't mean that the slaves weren't at the quarry, cutting stones at the quarry. So that probably was likely. The monument also has no mortar in between the stones. So it is held together strictly by friction and gravity. So isn't that amazing? By 1854, the society ran out of funds. So we've got to come up with a new scheme to fund this memorial. I think they thought they were probably about $200,000 short of finishing it. But what they decided to do was let people donate stones. So your group or organization or your state can donate a stone. So they got lots of stones, and on the inside of the monument you can see all the stones. It was easier to see back when they let people go up the steps, but you could only see it in the elevator. They will stop the elevator at certain points so you can see different stones and who they were from. But so anyway, there was this one particular stone that caused a commotion and a problem. Pope Pius IX, he donates a stone from Rome. It actually came out of the Forum, and it was for the Great Temple of Concord. So pretty amazing stone to have something that ancient and, from the Temple of Concord in the Forum. That's pretty cool. Well, you know what happened to it? A group called the Know Nothings. They broke into the construction site, they took the stone, they destroyed it, and they threw it into the Potomac River. Well, most likely they threw it into the river. Why did they do this? Well, because they were anti-Catholic. anti-Catholic, anti-immigrant, total Protestant all-American group. And they were so radical, and they took over the society. They held a fraudulent election, and Congress was so peeved about this that they decided not to give the $200,000 that was needed to continue with the construction. So for quite a few years, nothing happened. I think the know-nothings were able to raise it another 4 feet. They finally gave back the rights to the society to finish it back in 1858. So Civil War breaks out, and then of course no construction is going to happen during the Civil War. In fact, during the time of the Civil War, there was cattle grazing all around, and there was a slaughterhouse there, so yuck. And in fact, when President Lincoln looked out of the White House, he could see this stump because it stopped at about 150 feet. Now, when construction finally continues, you're going to see that there's going to be a change in the color of the stone. The quarry, they were unable to get stone from the original quarry that they had gotten the first stone, so they had to get it from a different quarry. So you can see, if you look close enough, you can see the difference in the stone. But the construction begins. They do get their $200,000 back from the government to finish doing the construction. And, they decide, okay, well, I guess we're going to have to cut a few things out. So that original design that Robert Mills had did not come to fruition. And instead, we ended up with just a simple obelisk. Now, this didn't make Robert Mills very happy. In fact, he said that, well, it's just going to look like a big stalk of asparagus. But anyway, the construction had stalled for like 23 years. So after, after the Civil War and the Congress decides we're going to give you some money, construction begins, and it's completed in 1884. Now there is a aluminum cap that is on the very top of the monument. And why aluminum? It's 100 ounces of aluminum. So it's not that big. But that was, at the time, it was about as precious as silver was. And it was a new metal, so it was kind of, we really didn't know that it wasn't going to be a big deal. But Tiffany's actually had it showcased in their department store in New York City. In fact, people were able, it wasn't a department store or jewelry store, people were able to actually jump over the stone. They had it on the floor, supposedly. And then they could say, hey, I jumped over the Washington Monument. Cute, huh? But anyway, the aluminum cap today acts as a lightning rod. So there we go. Now, in 2011, you may remember that there was an earthquake, a 5.8 magnitude earthquake that affected Washington Monument. In fact, probably about 150 stones were damaged, had cracks in them from it, and it took $15 million to repair the Washington Monument. And about half of that money was donated by a philanthropist, man named David Rubenstein, who has been a godsend to Washington, D.C., and I'm sure other places as well, as he's donated a lot of money for things in and around Washington, D.C. So we have him to thank for a lot of that. Now, were there any deaths at the monument? Well, yeah. Early on, there was 3. There was a man who jumped out of the window, because at the very top, those windows were open. Of course, today there's glass, so you couldn't do that if you tried. So he died, and another man jumped down the elevator shaft. So I must have been committing suicide. And a third person was a woman who thought her child was getting ready to fall. So she tried an attempt to try to save her child. She ends up falling. She fell to the 270 level and foot mark, and her child fell to the 400 level mark. She died, the child survived. So after that, of course, there was going to be more safety precautions put into place. So around the monument, there's 50 flags for the 50 states, of course. And today you can go in. That elevator when they first opened, the elevator took about 10 to 12 minutes. It was steam powered. And, or you take 896 steps to the top. In fact, if you were going to take the steps, you probably needed a candle to light your way going up. And a lot of people were afraid of the steam-powered elevator, so a lot of them wanted to take the steps. But there was trouble with the elevator, and in 1901, they were able to put in an electric elevator. And of course, there was some troubles with that, and there have always been troubles with the elevator. As long as I've been tour guiding, it's been shut down numerous times because of the elevator failures. So, but you can no longer walk up the steps, so that's not even an option. But it's great to go up to the top. You have a fabulous view of Washington, D.C. One way you can look out and see the Capitol, or you can look out on one side and see Thomas Jefferson and Arlington Cemetery. On another side, you can see the White House. So fabulous views at the top. It's well worth going up in the elevator. I hope you enjoy that, and I hope you get a chance to go to Washington, D.C. and actually go to the Washington Monument. Thanks for watching Tour with Lisa. I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.